Hello everyone. I hope you all are enjoying this conference. I am Beauty Kumari and I'm a policy analyst working with a think tank right now in Bihar. And it feels great, when you share the session with one of your alma mater. So Martin is from London School of Economics and Political Science, and I'm also from London School of Economics and Political Science. Recently graduated from United Kingdom. And I'm also a Commonwealth scholar. And it also feels great, when you have somebody in the session who shares the same domain of expertise, as in like Mukesh sir. He has led Care India and has an expertise for 20 years in health and nutrition. So I feel really privileged to, present in front of these people. So I will start my presentation. So as you can see, my topic is Corporate Social Responsibility, a potential catalyst in improving communities' health of rural Bihar. So as I believe many of you are from Bihar itself, so you all must be aware that, I think this slide is not working. So I was saying that as many of you must be from Bihar, you are aware that Bihar is the third most populous state in India. And so it is very important, when we talk about corporate social responsibility, to change the scenario of the health indicators that exist in the state right now. So my structure of presentation is I'll start with introduction, wherein you'll know about what my paper is going to argue, and then methodology, what I have adopted, current scenario of community healthcare in Bihar, then current scenario of CSR fund in Bihar, and then best practices of CSR in public health. As in, you will understand why I'm saying that CSR is very much important, when we talk about changing the health scenario in the state. And finally, I'll conclude with a few recommendations. And of course, everybody has some limitations, and my paper also have one or two. So yeah, I'll also share that. So introduction is, as I've said, that Bihar is the third most populous Indian state, where 1/3 of the population lives below the poverty line. Still, when you see that 1/3 of your population is living below poverty line, 80% of the expenditure in Bihar is coming out of pocket. What does that mean? That means, not government is spending on expenditure, but majority of the expenses, it's coming from the individuals or the household itself. So it does not include insurance. If you are thinking that out of pocket include insurance, it's not. It's just mere, the money being paid out of pocket to get the health services. And this, out of pocket expenditure leads to the catastrophic health expenditure, which leads to 6% of impoverishment of households in Bihar as per SSO data. Yet, looking at the scenario, 1/3 of the population living below poverty line, and then, you have the third most populous state, 80% is coming out of the pocket. Still, Bihar has the lowest per capita health expenditure. So you can see, there is a graph out there where you can see that average Northeast states, non-EAG states, everywhere you see Bihar is at the bottom with 491 as per the National Health Profile 2019 Government of India data. So this is the scenario of Bihar where we live. So definitely we need, external funding, and not only external funding, but the strategies, innovation, technologies which CSR or through corporate can bring in. There is a lot of evidences. So when we talk about health, we imagine, that somebody will build the infrastructure, somebody will donate something, what Martin was also saying. So like donating, say, diagnostic tools or something like that. But that is one part. Evidences, confirm that 20% of global diseases and 33% of children's diseases which are actually preventable is environmental factors, is because of the environmental factor, And there is another, like WHO says that 30 to 55% of health outcomes is because of social determinants of health. I'm not sure how many people are aware of these words like social determinants of health and the environmental factors, but these basically are non-medical factors. It is something, like you have water, you have schools, education, and other things, which is not medical. So there is the scope, not directly intervening in improving the health services, but actually intervening in social and ecological determinants of health. So here is the main thing. This paper argues that the share of CSR, the paper which I and my co-author Pratyush Gaurav has written, it argues that CSR for Bihar needs to be increased. So later on in the paper you'll see that the fund that Bihar gets is very, very minimal. As in when compared to the other states that get it, out of the total CSR fund that exists in India, Bihar gets very nominal, So CSR do have the potential, and that I will show through 3 of the case studies. And through these studies, I would like to argue that the CSR has the potential and that CSR fund needs to be improved. And because of the social and ecological factors, and because of the vulnerability and the disadvantage thing rural people face, wherein in Bihar 88.7% of state's population live in rural area, it becomes very critical when we talk about CSR doing their stuff not in urban but in rural area, because 88.71% of India's state's population live in rural area. So that was all about the introduction, what my paper argues and what is the scenario of Bihar. So methodology, as in it is purely based on the desk review of literatures. I have not done any primary research. It is purely based on existing literature. And I have used a few of the data, as in from the budget books of Indian states, projected population as per census 2011, and there is a CSR data portal from where I have got the data related to CSR fund. My paper, has used a model which Martin and somewhere also Mukesh was talking, is we just cannot, intervene at one of the level, but there are different levels which are intermingled and are, impact each other. So I have used one of the model called social and ecological model of social determinants of health, which to highlight, to highlight that long-term impact can only be achieved if that Martin again was saying that you need to have the relevant and significant area where you need to intervene, right? So from this model, actually, I also wanted to emphasize that there are a lot of factors that is there, and we need to just pick up the factor that is actually important, relevant and significant for also the business and also for the community. So that is why I have also used social and ecological model of social determinants of health to highlight that long-term impact can be achieved and sustained by intervening not only at one level, instead multi-level intervention is required. This model actually, makes you understand that health to be affected by interaction between the individual, group, community, physical, social and political environment. So just, if you say that you need to wash your hand, but this is not going to change, make it sustainable, because there are other factors also. As in, if there is a supply of water or not, there is a tube well or not, there is soap available or not, if there is a policy which actually makes the system or, provide the enabling environment. So all these are intermingled. So that is why this methodology uses the social and ecological model, which corporates also need to, can adopt actually while designing their strategies. So here is the current scenario of community healthcare in Bihar. So in the table you can see the per capita government expenditure. This has been calculated by the authors from the budget state books and the projected population from census 2011. So you can see here in the recent financial year, the per capita income has been increased. As in, like in the first slide I have shown, it is around 400 something, but it do have increased in recent financial year. it's 1058, but still you can see that it is one of the lowest, you know. So since you have the lowest per capita expenditure in health, the public health infrastructure is in very poor, you know, state. So if I'm saying that it is in very poor state, one can argue, how can you say that? So here is an evidence, you know, like one PHC caters to more than 3 times the standard population size. 3/4 of nearly 1900 PHC have just one doctor each in the state. I mean, I don't have to say all this data, right? I mean, you all are from Bihar, you all are from India, and you know about this status. So I don't want to make you feel bored, so I'll just skip this data. And if you want, you can, like, there are a lot of researches, you can go through it. So basically, the point I was trying to make, where is it? Sorry. Actually, CSR can intervene. Now I'll show you what is the CSR status. Now I've shown you the status of health that is there in the state. Now I'll show you the status of CSR fund, and then we can actually have a look of 3 of the case studies. So again, here are some of the data, as in, like, under 5 mortality in Bihar is still at 56.4%. I mean, like, around, you know, half of the population. Infant mortality rate is 46.8%. And now, you know, the recent data, as in, like, NFHS, I don't know how many of you are aware of it, National Family Health Survey, NFHS 5 was released, and it actually, you know, very clearly has shown that the percentage of anemic women aged 15 to 49 has increased from the last year's survey. So right now it is 63.5%, which was previously 60.3%. And in Bihar, you know, like 1 in 10%. So the anemia, you know, it is not restricted to only women when we talk about it. But yes, I mean, women has to suffer a lot because of a lot of biological things. In Bihar, 1 in 10 or fewer boys receive weekly IFA supplements. The source is from CNNS thematic report. And in the period 2014 to 2021, just after the Company Act 2013 came into existence, in this 7 year it has received only 679 crores, and which is, you know, it's just 0.62% that I've already mentioned of the total CSR fund spent across the country in the last 7 years. So yeah, looking at the comparative thing, you know, you see Bihar does not exist anywhere in the top 10. Obviously 0.62 won't make it. But the EAG state, Empowered Action Group states, if you are aware of it, like 8 states are there, UP, Rajasthan and Odisha is there in the top 10 receiver of CSR fund. So that's interesting, right? I mean, Bihar is one of the EAG states, but it is nowhere here, and UP, Rajasthan, Odisha do have. I mean, the reason may be because Bihar does not have many of the companies actually operating here, and most of the CSR, as Martin was also mentioning, I mean, they do follow, I mean, I'm not questioning it, but I mean, iWash thing or something like Greenfield Project, or they are something like that. I mean, they work in the periphery. So that might be one of the reasons. I'm not sure about it, but yes. CSR unfortunately is treated as periphery activities by many companies. That's one factor that I've said. So from this you can see, you know, like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, I mean, those who already have better socio-economic situation, as in receive the highest proportion of fund, but the state which actually need it does not even get 1% of the share. So that's really pity. I won't say that the number of companies has not increased in the last 7 years. So if you can see from the data, the number do have increased. So the red one, 164, is of Bihar. So it has increased from 54 in financial year 2014-15 to 164 in 1920. So it has increased, but still, it's not very impressive. As you can see, like other states, as in like, these all are EAG states only. It has 968, 89. I mean, they are doing really well, as in like Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh and others are doing really well. So, I mean, government needs to strategize, to bring maximum number of companies on board so as to get benefited from the CSR fund, their technical skills, innovation and other things, obviously human resources as well. So, which will actually, help the government. I mean, government only by itself cannot handle all these, challenges alone, and it also require other hand. So CSR actually, corporates through the CSR can help the government to overcome these challenges. So CSR, my last point is like CSR has the potential to intervene in all the levels as highlighted by the model I have already described, that is individual, relationship, community and society. So that was about the health status that is there in Bihar.
Conclude, you have 2 minutes, you can conclude.
Sure. Now these are the best practices that I was about to talk. So there are 3 best practices. I mean, the e-health program center was there in Narayan Hrudaya Laya Limited, wherein actually they have used their expertise and they have actually went for teleconsultation, which helped the expenses go down. So actually the out-of-pocket expenditure reduced by 25% and 33% respectively in Rajasthan and Karnataka both. So this can be replicated in Bihar as well, teleconsultations, which can actually reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure. That is one of the main reason of catastrophic health expenditure. The other one is for Johnson & Johnson company in Africa. It has actually reduced the burden of HIV. So again, they have used their expertise in pharmacy. And this can also again can be replicated in Bihar, because there are issues related to breastfeeding and using contraceptives. So these again requires counseling, which can be adopted here. And the other last one is from the Britannia industry, Britannia Nutrition Foundation. I know everybody know about this Britannia thing. Everybody has these cookies. So yeah, so they have actually went for RCT, research, the randomized control trial. They did in Delhi. In municipal corporation is Delhi, and actually what they did is they used the fortified biscuits, and they found that hemoglobin among the children who consumed the iron fortified biscuits was 1 gram per DL in comparison to 0.3 gm per DL. So basically it shows that if the companies actually utilize their expertise and they actually target the intervention wherein they can use the expertise, actually can help the government also. So public-private partnership, just like East Delhi Municipal Corporation, can be adopted here in Bihar as well. So these were the 3 best practices that can be adopted, looking at the social and ecological model. So basically, the conclusion our paper says is Bihar poor health indicators that I have shown provide huge scope to corporates to intervene, especially at the levels of social and ecological determinants, because it can prevent maximum numbers of diseases at primary level itself. So the recommendations are Bihar government need to work towards attracting more companies to come and work in the state. The government should undertake studies to investigate how they can engage CSR with health system. Third one is companies need to instead of restricting themselves only to the factory, should expand the intervention in the places which are in genuine need, like Bihar. Food and beverages industries, pharma industries and others who have expertise in research and development, just like Britannia, can support the government with products that can overcome malnutrition. And finally, companies whose products are sold across the country, even in the far-flung area, should adopt strategies like social business or public-private partnership catering to social and ecological determinants of health in order to contribute to the development of society. So that was all about my paper, related conclusion. So limitation, as I've already said, that it is based on the based on the secondary researcher desk review. So there's a ample scope, to go for the primary researches, and government can actually conduct such researches and create evidences which can actually help government as well as corporates to come together and intervene in the area that required the attention. So that's all. Thank you so much.
So the next, okay, you can go ahead.
session chair, co-chair, the keynote speaker, fellow participants, and all the members of the audience. I'm Prerna Tamilkar, and I'm working as an assistant professor at a college in Goa, and presently pursuing my PhD at the Goa University. The title of my paper is Do Board Attributes Determine Corporate Social Responsibility, the Indian Context. The background or the introduction, when we are talking about the corporate social responsibility, the governance mechanism in the organization is a very important determinant of how much the extent, the breadth and the depth of the CSR engagement of any company will be influenced to a great extent by the corporate governance mechanism. And the governance mechanism, which basically consists of the board of directors, the ownership, and the government, the regulators, all these three will be influencing the CSR engagement. Now, in the Indian context, the engagement in terms of the governance, the importance of the governance parameters becomes all the more important because we are having a very unique system of families management system wherein the ownership structures, the ownership members, the owners and the board of directors tend to overlap a lot many times. So this is the context in which the study is set. And there are actually a lot of theories which have tried to explain the relationship between these two parameters, that is the CSR and the board of directors. Just to name a few, we have the shareholder theory, the stakeholder theory, the resource dependence, and the agency theory. I won't be going into the detail. Another reason why it makes sense to look at the connection between the two is the Companies Act of 2013, when it was introduced, had provisions for the CSR through the section 135 of the Companies Act, and at the same time it also had provisions for the appointment of the board of directors. So as we all know, section 135 of the Companies Act makes it mandatory for the companies which are specified on the basis of net worth, turnover, and net profit. It's mandatory for them to spend a minimum of 2% of the average net profit on the CSR activities as specified in the Schedule 7. Now, the same act also made provisions in relation to the board size. Okay. It also made provisions in relation to the gender representation, women representation, thereby contributing to gender diversity on the corporate boards. And it also made provisions for the independent directors. The proportion of the independent directors was specified as 1/3. The companies were required to have at least one woman director, and the size 15, of course, after passing a special resolution, then they could increase it. The regulator for the companies, that is SEBI, also had made provisions in this regard, wherein in September 2015, they came out with a notification that the company should be having at least one woman director on board, and at least 1/3 of the board of directors of listed companies should be independent directors. Again in 2018, SEBI came out with a notification saying that from 2019, the top 500 listed companies shall appoint a woman director who shall also be an independent director, which was an additional, requirement in the case of the companies, and this provision was supposed to extend to 1,000 listed companies from a year later, that is April 2020. Now, it is in this background, in the Indian context, that I proceeded with the study. If you look at the literature review on the CSR, the initial focus of the literature on CSR was on clarification of the concept, which till date still remains ambiguous. Thereafter, focusing on the relationship between the corporate social responsibility or the social performance in many cases and the corporate financial performance. something of great interest to the business society, to the business community, since if the corporations were basically interested in the business case for CSR. Thereafter, another thread or another theme of literature has also focused on the determinants of CSR engagement, why the companies will be engaging in CSR, which to a certain extent we can also consider as the stakeholder-oriented research. So there were internal and external stakeholders which the researchers tried to focus on. What is actually influencing the CSR? Why some companies are spending more than the others? Now, specifically, I have tried to follow the study of Endicott et al. 2020. This is actually a meta-analysis of 82 studies which he has picked up from for around 30 years from 1991 till 2019, and the conclusion of this meta-analysis was that he finds that the corporate boards influence the corporate strategy, and there is a great move towards recognizing CSR today as a corporate strategy, as the keynote speaker also said. Then he also found that based on these 82 studies, board size, the independence and the female representation on board are interrelated, they are interlinked, and they influence the CSR engagement individually as well as jointly. Now the research gap, there has been a limited attention paid to board composition and CSR as per Rao until 2016. A lot of such type of research has been carried out in the developed countries context. Of course, the research is picking up in the developing countries, especially the Post Companies Act of 2013. And most of the studies have used a proxy for CSR engagement in terms of the ESG scores or the ratings which have been given by various agencies like the KLT or the Fortune List or the CSR Hub ratings. And in some cases, the authors have also used the self-constructed indices. In the Indian context, we have a very objective measure of CSR spending which can be used as a measure for CSR engagement, which has been used in the study. So, two very broad objectives, I would say, of the study are to get an overview of the impact of the Companies Act on CSR spending as well as the selected board attributes. And the second one is to study how the board attributes have actually impacted or are they actually impacting the CSR engagement in the Indian context. As far as the data and methods are concerned, my sample is BSE top 100 companies which have been reduced actually to 97 companies for the availability of data and other things. The study period is 2015 to 2019 because post 2019 the penalty provisions might have changed the behavior of spending of the companies. And I've used two databases, CMI Progress IQ for the financial parameters and the CSR spending, the Bloomberg database for the board of directors parameters data, and wherever the data was missing, the data was supplemented from the annual report. For the purpose of analysis, I've used panel data regression, the fixed effects model, and this was tested by using the Postman's test that compared to the random effect. The fixed effects model would be a better model. I've used Stata 12 version for the purpose of analysis. So this is the regression equation wherein I'll just try to explain it in a more elaborate manner with the variables which have been used. So spent is my dependent variable, which is actually represented by the objective measure, as I said, the actual amount spent on CSR. My independent variables, the three main variables, the board size, the board independence, and the women representation. Then the control variable, CEOs as other directors for other companies might be affecting, or the board compensation. The size and profitability, because size has been found to be one positive factor which has always been impacting the CSR spending, so that has been included to complete the model, and the profitability to see how whether there is a difference between the profitable companies, whether that impacts the spending. Now, why board size, independence, and women representation? As I said, I followed NGCAT ECA 2020, who have reviewed 82 primary studies and found that these three factors are the most influential ones as far as the board attributes are concerned. Board size is found to be influential based on the resource dependence theory, because more the number of board of directors they are supposed to get, and it is expected that a higher amount of knowledge and expertise will be coming to the so in that sense, the diversity in terms of the number of directors might be impacting. The board independence, because based on the agency theory, the independent board of directors would be more society oriented, and in general, studies have proved that women are more socially oriented as compared to male directors. So that is the rationale roughly based on the theories. Now coming to the first objective, what has happened to the average CSR spending and the board attributes for the BSE 100 group of companies, which I said has, which as I said in the data and methods slide, has actually boiled down to 97 companies. The CSR spending average per company for the top BSE 100 group of companies, as you can see, has increased considerably. The board size, yes, of course, it has increased from 10 to 11. The board independence, though 1/3 is the stipulated, it has increased from around 50% to 53%. We have a long way to go as far as the women representation on board is concerned, because from 10, we have made a progress to around 15.23. So out of the total board size, on an average, the BSE 100 group of companies would be having 15% women directors, which is a positive sign. But then we are lagging behind considerably as compared to the global average of around 28% as per the MSCI report. Now, these are just the descriptive statistics of the analysis. Now, after running a fixed effects regression, what was found was that the independence of the board of directors influenced the CSR spending in a positive manner, and this was significant at 5% level. Whereas the positive impact of women representation on board on CSR was significant at 1% level. So, though independence as well as women representation on board, both these board attributes are contributing positively, the strength of independence is higher. The strength is higher in the case of independence as compared to the women representation. The board size, the board compensation, and the CEO acting as the directors on other companies were not found to be significant, and as expected, the profitable companies and the larger sized companies tend to spend more. So, just to wind up with the findings to conclude, we can see that the independence of board and the gender diversity on board both are contributing positively, but the strength is stronger in case of stronger in the case of board independence. Now, in this context, if we look at the move of SEBI towards requiring the woman director to be an independent one from 2019, this study has not considered the data from 2019, of course, once this regulation came into force. But this move can be considered to be a welcome move, because it can be an important contributing factor to improving CSR engagement. Because if independence was contributing more and women directorship was also contributing, then together these factors might be contributing together more towards the CSR engagement. And yes, from the control variables, you can see that large size profitable companies spend more on CSR. Now, as requested by the session chair, I would just like to recapitulate based on whatever limited that I have read on CSR, what I'm reading for my research. As rightly pointed out by the keynote speaker, it's very essential that CSR is internalized in the business operations of the corporates. In the Indian context, what we see over the period of 5 years is there has been a change and a positive change in the attitude as far as the CSR spending is concerned, which was evident from the average CSR spending of the top 100 companies also. Yes, the
And you can conclude. We'll move to next.
Yes, just MCA have been making relevant amendments and the provisions, regulations. There have been changes depending upon what was felt needed at a particular point of time, and COVID time was one such example wherein the government requested for additional sectors, and there was spending coming in from the corporate sector. Uh, uh, yes, so
We can discuss this more after presentation. We can discuss.
the government intervention, that has to be the objective now. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. M. Silvaraj. Okay, so then the next presenter is Debadatta Nayak. The topic is participation in nation building through corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes. Do I need to share the paper?
Yeah, if you are having, you can say.
Sure. So, okay. So, firstly, I won't be reading the entire paper. Perhaps that will, surpass the time limit.
Okay, I think Mr. Selvaraj also joined, so we can finish the presentation of Mr. Debadatta Nayak, then we'll move to M. Selvaraj.
Sure. So,
Can I proceed, sir?
Everyone for this great opportunity, and my respects to all the dignitaries present here in the International Conference on CSR, Inclusive Development and Welfare 2021. The topic of my paper is participation in nation building through corporate social responsibilities. I will try to keep this short and precise. Charity begins at home, but should not end there. So, we always have a tendency to think of as my salary, my profits, my business. Isn't these terms useless in Mars? So what do I mean by saying this? It is the surroundings that plays a vital role in the success of the process and efforts made by the practitioners. So what is the surrounding? It is the society, the environment, the local land, resources. Okay, am I? Okay. Okay. I thought it was visible, so apologies. I hope it is now visible, right? Right. So, what is surrounding? The surrounding, it is the local land, the environment, the resources, and yes, the people. Businesses employ so many employees, right? So they act as a proxy for society. So that means if the businesses are paying them salaries, they should not worry about something called as CSR, which incurs an extra expense, right? Obviously not. The reality is slightly complex. Those employees may have families, they need basic amenities. You don't expect a parent worried about where his or her child will do schooling because of absence of schools and expect them to be productive at work. Businesses use natural resources and at times because of movement of heavy machinery and similar such heavy industries, the pre-existing resources which were there before a business began in the locality, they also get depleted or they also get damaged. So perhaps businesses should do a little bit more than merely pay salaries. Businesses and societies are interwoven. Companies can therefore profoundly influence communities and their development for the better or for the worse. The key principle of CSR is that the businesses should have a strategy that is more all embracing than short term profit maximization. And how could they achieve, how could they target these strategies? There are four domains, right? There are four domains of CSR which outlines the boundaries of CSR for firms. One of those are economic responsibilities, that is the duty to generate profits and wealth, the primary for business operations. Legal responsibility, duty to be law-abiding, not to do anything illegal, obviously. The third point is ethical responsibility, the duty to conform to society's core ethical values that which is acceptable. The keynote speaker, he actually discussed about the first 3 points. Obviously, the fourth point is the discretionary or philanthropic responsibilities, the duty to use resources for the betterment of society. So obviously, managers of those companies play a bigger role than just to work for 9 to 5. Their decisions impacts environment. So now we will talk about managers and their impact. Now let's come to the globalization of businesses and how CSR is getting impacted. What are the changes in the dynamics of CSR? So CSR in a globalized world is a concern for all types and sizes of businesses. The economic size and the international spreads of multinationals mean that they have a greater potential to affect the operations and businesses in other locations, and they are therefore attributed greater responsibilities. So, just a second. So, one of the most recent accidents that happened, the Nike factory collapse case in Bangladesh, it's a fresh example of such a fiasco. MNCs pour billions of dollars to CSR teams, but their workforce lose their lives while working for cheap wages. Had the CSR been directed properly, such MNCs could have foregone the reputational losses that they took, which they take decades, which they take centuries to nurture, right? Such businesses have their valuations greater than the GDPs of certain countries. So you would obviously expect them to show a certain level and a certain kind of responsibility. With this recent example, let's directly jump to a historic example based in 1824, the story of Cadbury. The owners, in pursuit of expansion, they acquired a land and named it Bonville Town. They focused on developing the city. They emphasized that 1/10 of the land should be used for parks and recreational areas. So Cadbury plant in Bonville became to be known as a factory in a garden. Now, obviously, hearing these stories, it is now a center. It's now an attractive place to work for. So it is clear that the CSR is not a foreign concept to us. Perhaps we just have forgotten. We just have forgotten this in the pursuit to chase for bigger and better numbers. So what has been done to remind us, to remind the business person, to remind the companies about CSR? What has been done? So India has a new CSR regulation, the policy, right? According to that, the companies with revenues greater than 1,000 crore or a profit of greater than 5 crore will have to spend at least 2% of their average of the last 3 years profit towards CSR activities. And there is a rule of composition of board, and there are also certain target sectors where CSR investment should happen. So that is great. So we have a policy in hand, and since the implementation of this policy, the total CSR investment has skyrocketed by approximately 57% from what it used to be. So we talked about 2 foreign companies, and a CSR talk is incomplete without mentioning the Tatas. CSR philosophy of Tata is to give back to the people what you have earned for them. Right? Tata spends 5 to 7% of their profit after tax, on several CSR initiatives. Clearly, they believe in inclusive growth. So all should grow hand in hand, even though if the speed of growth is slower, it is still worth it. With this, as you can see on screen, there are so many initiatives of Tata. So with this, I would like to conclude that the businesses need to realize it is not about the law. If businesses fail to realize that it is a responsibility, then let me put it in this way. It is actually a business requirement to do generous CSR. Let me repeat this. It is actually a business requirement to do generous CSR. Because only when we give our nation the basic amenities and alleviate their basic living standards, only then they can aspire to grow and prosper and ultimately join the business as a stakeholder. Maybe as a customer, maybe as an employee, or perhaps even maybe as an investor.
Thank you, Mr. Naik. So now we can move to Mr. Selvaraj for the presentation. So you can share your PPT.
Yes, sir. Person and co-chair and all the organizers and the other delegates attending this program from various parts, online, offline. Good evening to all of you. Equitable socio-economic inclusive growth, a government initiative, is the paper. It was collectively written by Dr. Sarita R and myself, Selvaraj. The presentation journey starts with the introduction, and I move on to the conceptual framework of the social paradigm on inclusive growth and the contribution of the public sector enterprises to inclusive growth and the impact factors which it determines for the socio-economic inclusive growth and government initiatives, so for whatever they have done it for the women employees particularly, and finally the destination reaches with the conclusion. As we all know very well that society is made out of different type of characteristics of human beings. Each and every individuals are unique in their character, behavior, naturally, in their perception, thoughts, dreams and hopes. However, each and every individual in the society, we are trying our level best to create an identity predominantly, either by knowingly or unknowingly imitating or perceive others. Members, with respect to age, belief, behavior, caste, culture, education, economic status, ethnicity, lot more variables. And most of the times the people, they are identifying their groups. Only the groups, those who are going to have the value, respect and resourcefulness and potential self-esteem. In case the society or the people are going to be identify their group with their other aspects like age, appearance, gender, sex and religious and potential and cultural affiliations, that kind of affiliations and identity of the people which creates a paradoxical situations and lead the people to have imbalance and discriminations in the society. Therefore, the policy implications are very much needed to focus the social inclusion, which ensures accepting all people to take part in the decision-making process, especially the people those who affect on those cases. The conceptual framework of the inclusive growth basically talks about four important elements. Social cohesion, which is nothing but bring the people together in society, and social exclusion, which is nothing but the barriers and impediments in the process of the social inclusion. And social inclusion, the active participation in all aspects of life of all members in the consistence of economic, socio-political and aspects of decision making. And finally, the paradigm, it also talks about social participation, inclusive participation, which is nothing but active involvement of all social activities. There are 9 different dimensions which it talks about social inclusion and exclusion policies, as it is listed in the diagram. Culturally, economically, environmentally, legally, politically, socially, environmentally, spiritually, the people are get connected and deviated in the society. So these are the 9 dimensions have been identified for social inclusion and exclusion in our paper. The way in which how the public sector it plays a crucial role for inclusive growth is identified here. The sustainable and self-sufficient socio-economic development is the prime objective of almost all the countries in the world in the 21st century. Whereas in India, it is being in a very low and weak base in all sectors with respect to the attainment of sustainable and self-sufficiency in socio-economic development. The initiatives of the government, especially through the public-private sector partnership basis, it's very, very important to accelerate the economic growth of the core sectors in the Indian economy. Basically, the public sectors in India, it's functioning in 3 different ways or 3 different classifications. Public sector enterprises, central public sector enterprises, and public sector banks. The public sector enterprises develops a self-generating economy in a multiple and accelerating industrial foundations. Agriculture is the largest private sector in India, which provides a huge employment opportunity for the social inclusion and economic inclusion of the society. However, the support of the public sector enterprises to the agriculture sector, we can just say that it is inevitable. To India, states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal are identified as the industrially developed regions. But some other states like Assam, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Orissa are considered as a less developed industry regions in India. The public sector enterprises have made a lot of advancements over a period of time, and the path which has made in the Indian economy has made the industrial sector to produce most of the life-saving drugs which were earlier imported from other countries. The initiatives made by the government of India, remarkably, we can just pinpoint it here. The manufacturing of IP-based products, the idea which was proposed and implemented with the support of the late Honorable Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, and the introduction of LPC policy, very famously, popularly known as Rao Singh policy, and the present, the idea of Make in India policy of Honorable Narendra Modi. So these are the 3 crucial policies we can take into consider from the public sector's point of view for the inclusive growth the government of India has taken. Public sector enterprises, basically, it removes illiteracy, unemployment and poverty. What are the factors? Basically, it makes and being as an impediment which determines the inclusive growth in our society. There are 3 important factors have been identified over here, that is poverty eradication, employment creation and geographical characteristics. These are the 3 factors have been identified as the factor determinants for the inclusive economic growth, inclusive socio-economic growth in India. At the outset, the initiatives have been taken by almost all the countries in the world through the Millennium Development Goals to remove poverty, inequalities and the social exclusions, but still it remains rampant and closely related. Poverty is a root cause for all the struggles the people they are facing politically, socially, economically, and ethically keep them away from the productive resources. So social inclusion is the policy basically promotes a people-centered approach to remove the poverty, eradications, and empowerment of the people for the full participation in all aspects of socio-political and economic life. So income generation and the providing an employment opportunities are the two options basically provide an automated stakeholder position to the people suffering and marginalized and people are disadvantaged in the society to the larger extent and creating their own identity in the society and having access with the rest of the sources in the state. The history has revealed that the highest rate of unemployment was recorded in 2006 was 200 million. Even just before the pandemic period, 187 million people were identified as unemployed in 2019. Whereas the recent International Labour Organization has forecasted that unemployment rate is going to reach the new height of 205 million people in the year 2022. So one of the main reasons have been observed and identified for this increasing unemployment rate was the gap between the quality, skills and the techniques expected by the organization and the labor force. It is not matching, which deteriorated the people from the job market. So all these obstacles not only preventing the people from the existing labor force, but also it is making the impediments to the new startups. As a result of that, typically the vulnerable and the disadvantaged sections in the society are getting only a few opportunities in the formal sectors. The new economic reform policies such as public-private partnerships, small-scale, medium-scale enterprises need to extend the diversified labor force activities in order to ensure a better linkage between the social protection and the lifelong learning and skill development in the society. And cooperative enterprises in the rural development, it also has to play a crucial role to provide an opportunity economically weaker section and socially disadvantaged section in the society. The geographical characteristics is also one of the main reasons. It was stated earlier. It's also highly being as an impediment, creating struggles to the people in the society for inclusive growth. The divisions of South and North classifications, it is not only prevailing in India, even is all over the world. The history clearly says, and it produces evidences also that North is always being viewed more economical and powerful and wealthy than the counterpart. Human Development Report of 2007 and 8 revealed that how the livelihood of the vulnerable people are adversely affected, particularly at the time of the natural calamities. The poorest and disadvantaged and the most vulnerable people, not only they are affected adversely, but also their adversity is staying for a longer period because of the disaster climate shocks. Migration is one of the options or alternative for the socially disadvantaged people, where their opportunities can be created and the opportunities are denied where they can make use of this migration to survive in the society. What are the initiatives that have been taken by Government of India, especially for the women workers? The socio-economic
So you have 2 minutes left, you can conclude.
a path to gender equality and poverty eradication and sustainable development. Women and Men in India report 2015 highlighted the status of obstacles of the women employed in different sectors and the initiatives have been taken by the government for gender equality. The Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation on Millennium Development Goals of 2015 is also projected that the women employment in the non-agriculture sector has increased from 18.6% to 19.3%. Maternity Benefit Act of 1961, the Equal Remuneration Act of 1973, the Social Security Act of 2008, particularly the women employees are working in the unorganized sectors, and Sexual Harassment Act of Women at Workplace Act of 2013, and Indira Gandhi Matrimonial Sahab Yojana scheme to provide a well-being and a nutritional status for the pregnant women by offering a cash benefits. These are some of the benefits have been implemented by Government of India for women employees. Though over the decades the resource allocation and the access to the education has improved, especially for women, but still around 260 million children As of 2018 survey, it says that people are away from the education system, which is projected 1/5 of the total world population in that particular age group. And more than 91% of the education system around the world was almost interrupted under their regular activities due to COVID pandemic. And 1.6 million students were out of their formal education system as of April 2020. Now I am coming to the conclusion. The composition of three-tier constitutional framework, it is one of the best advantage and environment we have in our country to foster the policy execution in a more effective way in a diversified people. The highly diversified society on every aspect like language-wise, culturally, behavior-wise, cloth, food, caste and beliefs and traditional society like India. Definitely it's need a special and additional attention forever required to take care of the needs of the poor and vulnerable and disadvantaged groups to make equitable socio-economic inclusive growth. So far, whatever the projections have been made by the government of India has taken, and still the government of India needs to continue to travel along with the incumbents in every aspect effectively and efficiently for equitable socio-economic inclusive growth for a long way. This is the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. We can move to the last presentation by Marzia Musharraf.
Present there, online and offline. I am Marzia Musharraf, and I am an assistant professor at the Department of Economics, Patna University, and I am also research scholar at the Department of Economics, Patna University. The topic of my paper is Corporate Social Responsibility, a step towards social welfare. This paper actually attempts to focus on the need and concept of the corporate social responsibility. Why was there a need for the emergence and for evolving the concept of CSR? The concept of CSR was introduced in order to make the corporate sector realize about their obligation towards the society. The mandate of the corporate is to earn profit, and so companies use natural resources directly or indirectly. Yes, sir? Sir, I'm sharing the screen. Just a minute, sir. Natural resources directly or indirectly to earn profit, which in turn leads to creation of negative externalities in the society. And to compensate this loss created by the corporate sector or the organization, it has been made mandatory for companies to spend some of their income for the well-being of the society. This paper also focuses on how different corporates have taken initiatives and are contributing to the upliftment of the society. But before I proceed, I would like to draw your attention towards two important terms that form the topic of my paper, that is CSR and social welfare. The concept of CSR has a long and varied history, and it has gained interest over the years. It was actually implemented in India from 1st April 2004 under the Companies Act 2013. CSR is a type of management concept where companies integrate social and environmental concerns in their business. CSR is a self-regulating business model that helps the company be socially accountable to itself, to its stakeholders, and to the public. By practicing CSR, also called as corporate citizenship, companies can be conscious of the kind of impact they are having on all the aspects of society, including economic, social, and environmental. Coming to the second part, that is social welfare. Social welfare is actually the group of assistance program designed to ensure the well-being of nation citizen. What kind of welfare? Whose welfare? It is the welfare of those who needs to be addressed, the marginalized sector, the underprivileged sector. Welfare is supposed to be taken care of by the government as citizens are under social contract with the state. Upliftment of the society encompasses several activities such as from feeding the hunger to granting opportunities for the marginalized, taking care of the sick and destitute, and to giving aid for the starting of various ventures. Coming to the next slide, when we talk about the applicability of CSR, the Section 135 of Companies Act provides a threshold limit for the applicability to those companies who has a net worth of rupees 500 crore or more, turnover of rupees 1000 crore or more, or a net profit of rupees 5 crore or more. These companies are bound to pay CSR. Further, as per the CSR rules, the provision of CSR are not only applicable to Indian companies, but it also applies to the branch and project offices of foreign company in India. Then we have the committees and the policies, CSR committee and policies. We have the formation of committees, every qualifying. Sorry, sir? This one, sir?
No, your slides are not visible, but you can continue.
Okay. Then we have different activities under which CSR can be taken. Schedule 7 of section 135 mentions the activities in which companies can engage to accomplish its CSR obligation. These include end hunger, poverty and malnutrition, improvement in maternal and child health, promoting of education, promoting sport activities, ensuring environmental sustainability, measures for the benefit of armed forces, protection of national heritage, development of slums, construction of toilets in schools, and contribution to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund or any other fund set up by the central or the state government for socio-economic development. Apart from this, recent amendments have also been made by the BJP government in October 2014, where the two flagship policies of the central government, Swachh Bharat Kosh and Clean Ganga Fund, have been also added to the activities. The main part of my paper is that which are the top 10 companies according to the CSR Journal report. As per the data from the CSR Journal 2020, Infosys has beaten Tata Chemicals for the #1 position in 2020 India's Sustainability and CSR chart. Coming to the rankings, we will be only talking about the top 10 companies and their contribution. First is Infosys Limited. Infosys has spent nearly rupees 360 crore towards various CSR schemes this year. Among the main CSR initiatives, it was a 100-bed quarantine set up in Bangalore in partnership with Narayana Health City, and another one which had 182 beds for COVID-19 patients for Boring and Lady Curzon Medical College and Research Institute. Second is Mahindra & Mahindra Limited. The company spent 93.5 crores on CSR initiatives during the financial year 18-19. Mr. Mahindra initiated Project Nanni Kali in 1996, which went on to become the biggest CSR program in India for educating the girl child. Third on the rank is Tata Chemicals. Although the prescribed CSR for 2019-20 was 21.39 crore, the company went on to spend 27.81 crore on community development projects. Tata Chemicals spent INR 12 crore on CSR annually, and wildlife conservation accounts for 30% of the budget. Then we have ITC. ITC Chopal is a long-running flagship CSR program by the company that has become the gold standard of community development in international circles. Fifth on the rank is the Vedanta Limited. Vedanta Limited not only supports agriculture and rural development, but also has a host of CSR initiatives focusing on themes such as water, energy, and carbon management. Focusing on its sustainability pillars of zero harm, zero waste, and zero discharge, Vedanta has generated 1,653 units of renewable energy, while solar power projects are being commissioned to produce 22 megawatt of power. Sixth is Wipro. Wipro has spent more than prescribed CSR budget in the last 3 financial years. Wipro's work in primary healthcare from 6 projects of 4 states touches the lives of more than 70,000 people. In terms of disaster management, Wipro has helped rebuild the life of people affected by Karnataka floods, Bihar flood, Odisha flood, the Japan tsunami, Hurricane Sandy, and Philippines cyclone. Seventh on the rank is Hindustan Unilever. Hindustan Unilever Limited, popularly known as Unilever, works on the basis of USLP, Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. This plan was launched in 2010. USLP has 3 global goals: to help more than 1 billion people take action to improve their health and well-being, to reduce the environmental footprint of its product, and to enhance the livelihood of people as they grow their business. Next is Godrej Consumer Products. Godrej Consumer Products Limited spent rupees 19.49 crore on CSR initiatives in financial year 2019-20. Disease prevention, waste management, livelihood with a focus on women are some of the areas of focus for its flagship corporate citizenship initiative. Next is Grasim Industries. The new entrant in 2020 is Grasim Industries. a part of Aditya Birla Group. The total CSR expenditure by Grasim was rupees 47.14 crore, and the company's CSR work is carried out under the aegis of Aditya Birla Center for Community Initiative and Rural Development. Last is the Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. It is a government of India. It is controlled by Government of India, and it is a Maharashtra oil and gas company. As part of its corporate social responsibility for COVID-19 relief, the PSU organized Swachhta Pakhwada 2020 from July 1 to 15, 2020. This special initiative was in support of the Indian government Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Under the umbrella of enabling quality education, the focus of BPCL CSR is on imparting holistic education. Just to conclude, the concept of CSR has generally gained prominence from all avenues. Organization must realize that government alone will not be able to get success in its endeavor to uplift the downtrodden of the society. Good corporate governance means governing the corporation in such a way that interests of shareholders are protected. At the time, the India is a fast-growing economy, as we know, and is booming with national and multinational firms. But at the same time, the Indian land also faces social challenges like poverty, population growth, illiteracy, just to name a few. Therefore, it is all the more imperative for the Indian companies to sensitize to CSR in the right perspective in order to facilitate and create an enabling environment for equitable partnership between the civil society and business. The mandatory CSR practice initiated by Indian government is a welcome step to ensure social welfare of the nation. Government should take initiatives or steps for incentivization of those companies which are more socially connected or responsible. That's it, sir. Thank you.
To the chairpersons, we can spend some 10 minutes on discussion, 10 to 12 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thanks. It was really enlightening to see the voices coming from different constituencies about what the impact has been and what the expectations are and how it has been implemented on the ground, and especially in Bihar context. Two of the papers actually talk about this. So I really would like to, and especially the one which was presented by Ms. Margia, as well as one speaker from Goa. I really like that, especially the one that you presented, Ms. Prerna, about what the impact of the policy implications have been, especially after 2013, and how the corporate India has taken it up, and from there, what the growth of future looks like for CSR as well. And that was very heartening to see that the government, the way in which we have seen the CSR aspect increasing over a period of time, the board participation, and especially the women participation in the board was actually taken. I really like that idea. I would like to request you that if you could expand that ambit from 2015 to 19 to these 2 years, 2021 and 21-22 in particular, because these 2 years have actually seen the real fruit of CSR coming into the being, and you would have seen the latest figures that we have for 21-22 for CSR expenditure has gone above 20,000 crore, despite the corona being there and a lot of talks about economy collapsing and other things, and the way corporates have responded to it. That's a very welcome sign that we have. So I would like you to request you to look at these figures in these last years, and especially since SEBI has introduced this for the listed company. These two aspects would be really helpful to you.
Yes, sir, because... yes, sorry, sir.
do let us know if you need any access to data or any access to any other resources from the ministry side. We would love to provide them.
So actually, I was trying to get into that research. I mean, you'll have a scheme, right? Wherein the research grants, but then I happened to see it actually later. So I will actually be applying it for it the next time it comes.
That's not an issue. We can talk about how to finance it, but the topic that you have chosen is very important. And if you could prove through this data of how the one which the actual implementation of these legislations, how what shape it has taken, which direction it is going, and whether they are facing any difficulty in adopting it.
So I think the chairperson of this session, Mukesh Kumar sir from Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and all the presenter presenting such nice papers and getting comments from the chairperson and all the participants. So thank you all. So we can close it for today. So tomorrow we'll start at 10.
Thank you, sir.